Hello.
Hi, we are Doctors Jennifer and Jake Dean Hill, and this is the Doctors J&J podcast. We are so excited to be here with you today. We are both licensed therapists. We work together, we live together, we lead together, so we understand the challenges of being able to work peacefully and harmoniously together. We have come up with a simple, concrete solution. It's called Wear Two Crowns.
Wear Two Crowns is all about equity, learning how to bring out the strengths in each other, and learning how to share the power in the relationship so that we can all be better together. Each week, we're going to give you tips and tools and strategies and even personal stories to help you wear two crowns. And we're going to invite experts in the field of relationships that will help to educate us, inspire us to wear two crowns as well.
Yes. So tune in each week. We look forward to our time together.
Hello and welcome back to the Doctors J&J podcast.
It's good to be here.
We are back talking about sex again. Last week we talked about how to have a loving, pleasurable connection, which is always the intention of our sexuality and relationships, but there is oftentimes hurt.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we experience hurt and disappointment and unmet needs in this area. So we do not want to move on to another topic before we dive into what is the hurt and how do we repair the hurt.
And a lot of times the hurt comes long before the relationship comes or the marriage comes. And unfortunately, we always say this is one of the biggest injustice in society is that we have to help each other heal sometimes from the mistreatment of other people.
Yes.
And especially in this area, which is very tender, sacred, and typically doesn't get a lot of attention or help and requires, for obvious reasons, a lot of privacy, right? So it's a very difficult, sacred issue that we have the honor of walking couples through and helping them to heal from traumas a lot of times that came long before the marriage.
Yes.
But then also traumas that come within the marriage, and most of the time, very unintentional traumas that come from within the marriage.
Yeah, and it happens. And why do we hurt the ones we love? And always remind couples it's because they're the ones we love. And if we did or said the same exact thing to a perfect stranger, it wouldn't matter. But it matters to us.
It does. At the same time, it also go back to just immaturity, ignorance, lack of knowledge. We do things, differences. We talked quite a bit last time about the differences between men and women. Women being a crock pot that needs a lot of time for warm up, and men being the microwave that they can get right to it.
Right.
So it is the lack of knowledge a lot of times on that, but then also the lack of respect.
Yes.
To know how to navigate the two differences.
Yeah, make sure you listen to that episode because we went into a lot of details on how to have purple sex, which is the perfect blend between pink and blue. But since you brought up that initial first hurt, which is often common, which is the past trauma that we bring into a relationship, I think that's a good one to even just to start with in terms of the sensitivity. For one, it's surprising to me how many couples will have previous sexual experiences, whether they be good or bad, and they don't really talk much about them.
Right.
And part of that's out of respect for the person you're with,
right.
But it's so important that if you have trauma from a previous relationship, especially if you have trauma as a child, that is something that should never be kept from your current partner because of how that will come out oftentimes in your sexual relationship. And you have to navigate around that.
Yeah, you do. And I think compassion, empathy is very important in that process. A lot of times that gets avoided because the partner that is not the offended one, it feels so much anger and contempt towards the abuser or the person that did the mistreatment, the sexual mistreatment to their partner. So sometimes that anger gets in the way of helping their partner heal. So I think the biggest thing is just really coming with compassion and some knowledge. And with every situation, obviously it's different, but there is some basic tenets that you can do for each time, which is, like I said, the compassion, empathy, and bringing some knowledge to the situation to how to heal.
Right. And it kind of goes back to what we talked about last week as far as the love map and designing the lovemaking experience so it's good for everybody. And I think that's where, if you have trauma in a certain area where you were touched a certain way or something happened, a certain position, a certain thing, that you just make sure that that's either off limits and that your partner knows not to go there because of the trauma, or that if you want to try to re-explore that area, that you do it with caution and empathy and care. And it's a mutual thing that says, hey, I want to reclaim this area of my sexuality that I feel like got stolen from a previous experience.
Absolutely. That's something that we encourage people to do too, is like, hey, your sexuality is yours and yours alone to manage and to be responsible for. So if sexual boundaries get crossed at a young age, you can reprogram yourself sexually. You can like Jake said, to reclaim and to reframe what has happened so that you can understand how to handle your sexual life as an adult.
And sometimes that early abuse doesn't even come out until you are all of a sudden sexual and you're in an intimate relationship, and then that comes out and it kind of takes you by surprise. So we encourage you to do the work. Like, don't gloss over that and not deal with that appropriately, because it's not going to just go away because you have more sex or whatever. It needs to be healed so that it doesn't linger and have its effects.
Very, very well said. And I think the other thing that I find interesting, and I'm sure it's a lot of times just out of respect for your partner, but rarely do we know the sexual history of your partner. So many times I'm like, are we aware of how many sexual experiences your partner's had, or any abuse? And that rarely is talked about.
That's what I said, yeah.
Yeah, and I think just even to know the sexual history that goes beyond just the trauma, but just what were the pleasurable experiences? How many partners have you had? And that's not just for your own well-being, but that's also for your physical health too.
Good point. Yeah.
Is there any STDs? Have you ever been treated for STDs?
Minor detail.
So it's just a practical conversation to have, but I can appreciate it can be uncomfortable. And it's always, when we hear people talking about like when they're first dating, it's like, when do we have that conversation? When do you talk about it? So,
yeah, it's challenging, but
it is.
That kind of leads me to our next area. And we're just kind of going to go through different areas of potential trauma or potential broken trust or hurt in your sexual relationship. And the one that just popped in that relates to this is the one of comparison. And so as you're talking about your sexual history, sometimes what ends up happening and becomes hurt is you start comparing your current partner with a previous partner. And sometimes there can be a lot of hurt in that if you're expressing things like, oh, they did it this way and it was so much more pleasurable, or it felt so much better, or in doing that in a hurtful way. Now, obviously, if there's some helpful tips that you want to bring in, that's great. But
not in comparing.
Not in comparing.
Do not compare to somebody else. That just needs to stay off of your lips.
Right. But if there is
in the
that,
moment.
right,
Yeah.
if you unintentionally compare or you start mentioning other names, you need to be careful. And I think, one of the solutions to that is making sure that you are very affirming of each other, and that
Correct.
you're highlighting the positive things, because everybody's different, right? We all have different experiences, and we come into the relationship with different baggage per se. And it's important that we highlight the things that we love about our partner and not, just focus on the things that we're not getting that we used to get or whatever.
Absolutely. And everybody wants to feel really special.
Yes.
And they don't want to feel like I'm number 22 in this, or look at all so-and-so did this better, this and that, especially I will say for a woman too. Like the worst nightmare for so many women is two women that come to a party in the same dress, right? A woman wants to stand alone. She wants to have that space. She does not want to be compared. She doesn't want to be compared with bodies, performance, nothing. As soon as you start to do that to one another, the relationships leaves the safety zone and starts to go into that adrenaline or fear zone where the love can't be fostered or cultivated.
Right. Yeah. So, just be careful with that. You can't keep yourself from internally having some kind of comparison because of previous experiences, but it's just very important to keep that sensitive and make sure that you're respectful to the person that you're with.
That's your private voice.
Your private voice. I love how you say that.
Okay, another way that we can break sexual trust is by not respecting the no or sexual boundaries. Just because you're married, we did touch on this when we talked about sex on our last podcast, does not mean the boundaries are all lifted. It's very important that each one comes with their own personal boundaries, that what makes you feel safe, loved, and remembering that main goal or intention is a loving, pleasurable connection. That's the goal of sex. So if you're not feeling that loving, pleasurable connection from or with your partner, then that's off the table. It either needs to be touched on or discussed, or maybe some healing needs to happen for that certain act, whatever, or that might be just a no-go. So it's really important when your partner says, no, that's not where I can go, and that's not what I want, that's respected.
Yeah, that's where consent, right? We talk a lot about that with college students or with dating. It's like, hey, don't ever go to that sexual realm unless you have full consent. Sometimes, like Jen said, is you forget about that. You're married. Like, oh, you're married. Like I've already paid for this. I've already I've already earned this. We've already conquered this. And so we belong to each other. So there is no consent. We consented on our wedding day. It's like, wait a second. So you have to really, for one, be honest if you're the one giving or not giving consent. And sometimes we feel obligated in a relationship, especially if we're married or whatever else, and we feel like, that's part of our job as a spouse is to, give that as a gift to our partner. But the important thing is that your yes is yes and your no is no. And if your no is ever pushed, that you don't just let that go, because we've seen so much of resentment and bitterness where it's like, I keep saying no, or I push him away, or I push her away, whatever. It's like that happens, and the other person just kind of powers through, because even though they are saying no or they're not really into it, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't want it. And so we justify it then.
And so here's some examples of some sexual boundaries, like the time when a person maybe is at their sexual prime. This is when I perform better. I like it in the mornings. I like it in the afternoons. I like it at lunch break. I like it in the evenings, right? So the timing of that, of course, any kind of performance acts might be triggering or might be uncomfortable for a partner. So when they say, no, I don't want to do that position. No, I don't want to do it in that way. That needs to really be respected and not pushed or bullied. Obviously, the frequency, how many times you have it in maybe a week or a month or whatever, that needs to be respected. Sometimes people are like, I can't do it more than that. It's too stimulating. It's too much activity. It takes too much out of me, whatever, right? I don't have the time for it. I don't have the desire for it. But those boundaries need to be respected. And if there's consistently a clash of boundaries on that, somebody wants it with a more increased frequency and somebody wants it with really decreased frequency. This typically is when people come in and see us.
Which is what we talked about last session or last episode was just getting clear in terms of like, what is our shared goal when it comes to whatever it be, frequency, morning, evening, lights on, lights off type of thing. And that's so important. But if you have established that and that boundary gets crossed and you're not respecting the fact that we said, hey, we're not going to do it that way or whatever, it's very important that you recognize that that's breached trust, but also that needs to be repaired, because we can't just gloss over that and go, yeah, that happened again, but well.
Yeah, once the trust gets broken on that, it will continue to erode the trust in the relationship, just not in the marriage bed, but overall. It's like if you don't listen to somebody who says no in a place that is very sacred about their body and their physical space, it's really hard for that person to feel safe with you in other settings.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important, because this is such a sacred act. You must show a lot of respect for the boundaries. I am a little surprised with all we know about consent, how much this needs to be talked about still for marriages. I am surprised.
I agree. It's not talked about. And I
No.
think it's only talked about because we're dating and we got to make sure we don't get our partner drunk or my date drunk, and then,
Right.
have sex. It's like, well, I see that a lot with married people where,
Right.
hey, let's get a couple drinks on board and then I can do what I want. And it's like that, the long-term damage that does is very concerning. And so,
Yeah.
and it kind of related to another area of hurt, which is rejection.
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot, is I'm always rejected, or I don't want to initiate anymore because every time I do, they say no, or it's never the right time, or one person holds the keys to the sexual bedroom, or so that area of rejection and feeling unwanted or unpursued is a very common hurt. And it's very important that not only is that talked about, but that there's a solution.
Right. And a lot of times the rejection is happening because the boundaries are getting crossed. They're maybe not getting clearly stated. Clear is kind, right? So they're not clearly stating their boundaries, but then they're not getting respected. But then also, back to your point, there's not a vision for or goals for the sexual relationship. Like, what do we want this to be about, and how do we want to do this, and what's the frequency, and how are we going to hit those stages in the relationship? Do not feel bad if you're not talking about this as a couple.
Nobody does.
Nobody does.
Yeah.
But we are suggesting that you talk about it because, and it doesn't have to be every time you have sex, because that can be a little bit of a buzzkill. But definitely this conversation has to be had, because this is where there's so much, I think, trust gets broken when it's just very innocently because of misunderstandings and lack of conversation and lack of clarity.
It reminds me of what I said last episode as well, as far as rejection sometimes is worse when one person's not being honest, right? If you're the only thing you're saying is I'm tired and I have a headache, and that's the only reason why I don't want to have sex, instead of saying I'm not getting my other intimacy needs met, or you're not drawing me to you, that's going to solve a lot of the rejection problems, because then you're going to, at least the other person is going to know why you're saying no.
Right.
And it's very important. If you're going to say no, I think it's fair to let your partner know why you're saying no.
Right.
And what needs to happen for there to be a yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is going on internally or within the relationship that is causing that person to reject? I mean, that's where some insight is really needed. And sometimes the person doesn't know. Again, we would challenge, and I don't know is really a child's answer, right? So let's be wise adults and let's figure out, why am I rejecting this person? Sometimes it can be just something as simple as smell. I don't like the smell. I don't like the way he smells or she smells. I don't like the setting. I don't like the lighting. I don't like the timing, right?
There's a
We
lot
have
of
heard
reasons.
a lot of
Yeah.
reasons for why somebody rejects, but a lot of times they just get stuck in the no because that feels safe, but it's not connecting. So
Yeah.
another thing is huge. It's kind of the gimme, but infidelity obviously
yeah.
breaks trust.
Which I think the other part that goes with that is a lot of times pornography for a lot of women, especially, feels like infidelity.
For sure.
But obviously, if there's infidelity in the relationship, that's a huge wound to be healed. And to be honest, we see a lot of that in our office, and you would be surprised how high the percentage is of couples who actually stay together after infidelity.
Absolutely.
You would assume that it's pretty low, but it's actually close to 80% of couples stay together after that, even though all 80% of those probably swore that says, I will never stay with somebody who cheats on me. But when you're in it, and this is what I hear from a lot of couples is, and when you've invested 15, 20 years in a relationship or whatever, you're like, I don't want to throw that away.
Yeah.
And I respect that. And I respect the couples who heal from infidelity and do
Yeah.
the work. I have such respect for them.
Especially if the person's really repentive, like changing, it's a change of heart there.
Of course.
Which is the definition of repentance, a change of heart. Like, I want to change, and then they're filled with remorse, guilt, shame, and they're doing everything within their power to make it right. Those are the ones that are very rewarding to work with and helping to repair trust. I don't know how she does it, but Esther Perel, she's the leading expert on affair-proofing marriages. She's written a couple books on this, but
Yeah, she does a lot of it.
yeah,
And,
she's very hopeful about couples recovering from affairs. She does some good work on
and
that.
people do it all the time, but it's not for the faint of heart, for sure. And obviously, there has to be a lot of things in place, and we're not going to go into all of the details of how to recover from an affair, but obviously transparency is key. You cannot, I mean, you kind of lose the right for privacy or anything like that after you've been unfaithful.
And I do think we need to define what is unfaithful, because how many times have couples like, that doesn't count? But there is such thing as emotional affairs.
Yes.
And that typically, I will just say this, anything that holds a secret, right, from your partner.
Right.
And that you're finding pleasure and a mutual connection with somebody else in a sacred way that is designed specifically between you and your partner.
And I think a lot of couples are naive with that, where they have friendships with the opposite sex, and then, you know, they have a bad week or whatever with their spouse, and the friend just happens to call or text, and they are the soft place to land.
And they always say just the right
don't
thing.
they? It's just amazing.
Right. Which with that is typically just so much regret that comes.
Yes.
We encourage people, you know, find people that you can talk to that isn't somebody that you would be tempted to act out on or be inappropriate in any way, because it is painful. It is painful to be rejected in the sexual life. It's painful to not feel desired and chosen by your partner. It's painful when there's misunderstandings.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can be really easy to reach, whether it's through texting, sexting, images passed back and forth, porn, different things.
Yeah, just be very, very careful. And I always say, man, protect your relationship. It's sacred, and it's so hard to recover. And I know that couples do it, but man, if you don't have to, don't go through that, and just guard your relationship. It's worth it. It's worth putting those extra guards, even if you're like, yeah, but we've been friends forever or whatever. It's like, yeah, but you know, let's keep those boundaries. And it's so shocking to me that we are willing to give up our marriage or the current relationship for some friendship that's from 20 years ago. It's like,
For a quick text.
yeah, it's
Or
just not worth it.
yeah,
And
a meet up or any hookup or anything.
yeah,
And I have seen too, and I know you've seen this as well, is that the marriages sometimes come out stronger
yes,
from these, which I guess it's kind of like we compare it to like a broken bone. That you hear if you break a bone, right, your bone comes back stronger. Well, we have seen that with marriages where the relationship, they're like, we wish we could have learned this an easier way, but there is no way we would be where we're at in our marriage without this experience.
yeah, I would agree. There's so many couples that once they go through this hard thing, they are definitely much stronger because of it, and they have a greater appreciation for that intimacy. And so obviously there's a lot of ways that we create hurt. That's probably the biggest, obviously, infidelity, but these other ones can sometimes lead to infidelity because we don't heal the broken trust, or we don't heal the sexual hurt, and so then it just festers and festers, and then all of a sudden somebody says the nice thing at the right time.
And I will say this too. I think a close second cousin to infidelity is just crossing boundaries. There's not infidelity happening, but you're getting pretty close to that fire, right? You are saying staying a minute too long with a coworker and talking about personal things or things like that, right? That just starts to open up the door a crack and give some possibilities. We have heard the most, it's just unreal. And I know many of you have heard this too. It's like, how did this start? How did you get from didn't even know each other to naked in bed together, right? So
Yeah, it doesn't happen by
that is
accident.
not an accident. That is definitely some intentional work going in that way, even though people would like to just classify that, oh, I just made a mistake. No, that takes some work. That takes some work to get in that direction. But a lot of times the work is either subconscious or unaware. That sometimes there's some grooming that goes on for another person.
It's true. I've had
seen
so
that a
many clients who they have met a predator,
Yeah.
and they had
Yeah.
no intentions of ever having an affair or anything. And those are the saddest ones to
That
me
is.
because
Oh, yeah.
that's the last thing that they wanted or even pursued, but they were naive enough and they met a predator at the wrong time, and it did damage. But hey, let's jump into just the path of what are some things that couples can do if they have had hurt, they've kind of pulled away to their separate corners, and how they go about coming back together and healing their sexuality.
Well, each one, right, we've talked about when there's rejection, there needs to be more affirmation, right? So
Yeah.
each one is that we went through that breaks trust. We also tried to give a solution on there as well.
Right.
But there's probably, if we pan out a little bit more and have more of a macro view of like just
Right.
how to protect your relationship and repair from this happening or trust being broken. You know, I love the concept that whenever you disappoint, you break trust. And I don't know if that's relieving or terrifying all at the same time, but I think gives me a lot of power. Like, okay, when I am disappointing my partner, then I'm setting us up for broken trust. So I really try to stay out of that space. And when you are making promises to say, hey, yeah, let's be sexual, let's be intimate, but you're not then delivering, that brings disappointment.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And then that breaks some trust. So I think being aware of just not disappointing your partner and making sure that you're honest about your desire and your intentions
Right.
and the plans that you're making is huge.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I'll say too, when you're trying to come back together after being hurt, right? You kind of go in your corner and you're hurt, and you take a break, let's say, from being sexual. It's always important to start by focusing on all of the other areas of intimacy that maybe are not sexual, because sexual is that really vulnerable, one that maybe got the hurt created in. And so that's where we just really encourage you to focus on the relational intimacy, the emotional intimacy, the spiritual intimacy, and let those build so that both of you can feel safe to re-enter the physical or the sexual. And obviously, if the physical starts coming back online, you got to take it slow.
Absolutely. And one of the first things we have our couples do is that holding, right? It's a soothing technique. We've talked about co-regulation,
Right.
but being able to soothe the nervous system because there is dysregulation that's happened around the sexual connection. So what you want to do is make sure you're just like you would a baby. You're just calming each other
Yeah.
down and you're soothing each other with your bodies. And you can do that without being sexual. So holding is a great way to do that.
Yeah, and there's different degrees of holding, right? There's holding from behind, there's holding, in front of each other, and there's holding with clothes on, with clothes off. And we always encourage couples that if you're trying to reconnect after that hurt, right? After you've found out that the trust has been broken or whatever, that you make a decision that says, okay, we want to rebuild this. But the thing I will say is, do not let this go too long. Like so many couples sometimes, we're like, they let it go months and months and months of not coming back together sexually because of the hurt or because of something. And the longer that goes, the harder it is to bridge that gap. And so we always tell couples is like, definitely take the time to heal, but make sure you have a plan and a strategy to come back together as soon as you're able.
And most people don't know how to do it. They just think, okay, we'll just, when we come back together, we'll just kind of let some time heals all wounds. I love that one.
Right.
There's no place for a therapist if that was the truth. No, we need time and we need a strategy for repairing and healing. And so one of the things that we also encourage along with the holding is differentiate between affection and sex and make sure that you're increasing with the caressing, the touching, the non-sexual touching, and just a back rub or holding the hand.
That's nice. Oh, yeah.
Holding the hand, right? Things that are just very warm, soothing, and again, back to that co-regulating.
Yes.
So that does not go to the sexual piece. And we've touched on that before too. And this is very important, especially for women who do tend to be more of the victims than men when it comes to sexuality, trauma, right?
Yeah, we're usually the boneheads, us guys. And we usually kind of screw that up. But it doesn't mean we can't be the ones who heal it. And one of the things that we grew
Or
up,
not even you, people that come before,
that's
right?
true.
The husband
Like we
or
said,
the man in the marriage, yeah.
right, which is usually a guy too.
Sadly, yeah.
So
Tragically.
yeah, it is tragic. But one of the things that is a helpful visualization of this, and it's something that we grew up with, right? Did you get to first base? Did you get to second
Yeah,
base? Remember, you used to
right.
like go on a date and you're like, how far did you get? It's like,
Did you get home?
yeah, did you get all the way home? Well, no. So obviously, as a married couple or as a couple who's been together, you've been home. Well, right now, we're not at home.
Right.
Right? We're not, if home represents obviously being, intercourse or sexuality. But if you can focus on that says, hey, we had to take a step back into the dugout.
Yeah.
And we had to kind of regroup. And
Right.
so we got to get back up to bat for one. And that's what we encourage. Get back out there and get up to bat. But go to first base.
Right.
Right? Hold hands, have some gentle kissing or whatever. Then go to second base where there's a little more touching, a little more holding, right? Maybe third base is you start taking some clothes off or you start to learn that. And I think if you can see that as, oh, we don't have to just go all or nothing.
Right. But I will say this, that the person that was violated is the one that needs
Yes.
to be the leader. right?
Yeah, I'm ready for second base.
Correct,
Yeah.
because the biggest violation that happens is not the sexual trauma. That is definitely difficult, but even the greater violation that happens is the loss of power and control. Right, that is
yeah.
huge, and a lot of times this has happened long before the relationship as a child, right? Where they were mistreated sexually. And so when you are in an adult relationship, or if there's been trauma from your partner, the one that is the victim is the one that just has to hold the head on that says, hey,
No,
this
don't
is
apologize
the
for
direction.
that.
Yeah. And I only want to go this far tonight. And if the partner is resistant to that, that's when we find there's a lot of problems. Like
Well, it just creates pain on top of pain.
it creates pain on top of pain, but the lack of humility and submission to the person that has been victimized, and it's not always a woman, but most of the time it is, makes the repair very difficult, if not impossible. Then your partner becomes the secondary abuser that will not listen to not only your boundaries, but doesn't help you gain power and control in your sexuality. So that's a huge part of healing from past traumas or even trauma in the relationship. The victim has to have power. Let's help the power get reinstated.
Right. That's such a good point. I'm so wise. And I think one of the things that we help couples with a lot is giving them a roadmap. And so obviously, even if we use the first, second, third, fourth, third base and home as the model, we still have to define what happens at each base. And like Jenn said, the person who feels violated or feels like their trust was broken, they need to be the one, to direct that. But it is helpful if both of you, if you're going to start, getting back in the batter's box per se, that you both define what that path is, so that when the partner says, I'm ready for second base, you know what that means.
Well, that's a really good point too, right? It goes back to that vision.
Right.
What is your vision? And so many times I see, like, to use the visual of the baseball too, is like, they're like, okay, I'm going to get back to home, and all they do is spin around, right? I'm like,
right, they don't go anywhere.
You did not run to first, you didn't run to second, you didn't run to third, right? You're playing by your own rules.
That's not a home run.
That is not a home run. And it could be this also, what we've talked about is you're playing by your own rules, or you're playing by blue kingdom rules or pink kingdom rules, right? You need to make purple, and making purple is you play by the same rules. We all go to first base, then we go to second. And if you don't hit the ball, you strike out. You don't get number 4 on that, right? So it's that's having the game plan.
Yes,
is essential too. Especially more mature the marriages too, it sometimes requires some different workarounds in the relationship to be able to navigate differences or changing bodies or injuries or you name it. So
we always have to change certain things because of different things. So one last thing I want to bring up that kind of also goes back to last episode is your great illustration with the 3 fingers. So here's the illustration, okay? And obviously, if you're not watching the video, you don't know what I'm doing. But I have 3 fingers up and 1 on either side of the middle finger. And so if you're going to reintroduce sexuality in the relationship, it's so important that you're focusing on all 3 phases. And the first finger is the foreplay and that warm up, setting the table, what we talked about. The second is the actual act or intercourse. And then the third finger would be the afterglow and making sure that you're finishing the special time together in a very beautiful way. And when you take the first one and the second one out, it leaves, we don't want that.
we don't want that.
So
it doesn't play well.
We don't want just the middle finger. So we want all 3, and that focusing on all 3 of those phases is part of what brings the healing.
Absolutely. And it needs to be unique to each couple.
Yes.
And then it needs to be, however, timely for each couple. And sometimes you're going to want to maybe do it quicker, or different quickies, right? Or nooners, or whatever people talk about, right? And that needs just to be agreed upon too. So even if you both say, let's just go right here and let's just get her done, right? That's fine if it's mutual. But if that is consistently what your relationship is defined by, you're losing more of the deeper connection, of the spiritual connection, and the holding and the affection.
And what's the intention?
To build oxytocin and a loving connection.
A loving, pleasurable connection.
Not build adrenaline.
Right.
Fear-based.
And so, all right. Well, give us a crown jewel for today.
I think the biggest crown jewel is that trust can be repaired when it's broken sexually.
Yes.
And it needs to be repaired. And I don't know of anybody, of course, we never meet these people anyway, so not in our office, but I don't know of anybody who hasn't had some kind of sexual trauma before their relationship or in their relationship. And trauma, remember, can be anything from confusion and disappointment to, of course, acting out, crossing boundaries, violation, that type of thing. But typically, so it can come in a big spectrum, right?
Yes.
Trauma can. So I'm using that word loosely. The bottom line is we are responsible for our sexuality, and we're also responsible to repair it. And our partner it's part of the divine design is to be able to have that person help us heal in our sexual trauma, as long as we are playing by the same game plan and we have the same intention and there's clear communication. So
that's a great crown jewel. For one, it can be repaired and rebuilt, and make healthy intimacy a priority.
Right.
Well, thanks. This was a heavy topic,
you.
obviously, but we're so glad you joined us, and we hope this was helpful. And if you think it would be helpful to a friend or a family member, please pass it along, and tune in next week.
And remember to live, love, and lead better together.
See you next time.
Thank you so much.